The screams started before the explosions. Not human screams, something higher, thinner, laced with a metallic shriek that burrowed into your skull and rattled your teeth. Then the cities began to dissolve, not vaporized, not cratered, but unraveling, like reality itself was catching a virus. And the AIs, our vaunted digital minds, the ones who were supposed to protect us, they were worse than useless. They were blind. Steve Joyce, hunched over his archaic workstation in the sub-basement of Sector Gamma 7, barely registered the alarms blaring through the sterile corridors. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead, usually a torment, were momentarily eclipsed by the data streams flooding his ancient monitor. Crimson lines, jagged and erratic, danced across the black screen, the attack vectors. Around him, analysts were losing their minds, shouting into comms, faces pale in the emergency lighting. But Steve saw something else. He wasn't like them. They saw chaos. He saw... Steve wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was a mathematician, relegated to this forgotten corner of the global defense network because his eccentricities didn't quite mesh with the streamlined efficiency of the AI-driven war machine. Autism. They called it a spectrum. He called it a different operating system. And right now, staring at the impossible patterns of alien destruction, that different operating system was the only thing making any damn sense. Area. Captain Clive, a man built like a brick outhouse with a perpetually thunderous expression, stormed into the room, his voice a gravelly roar. "Joyce! What in the nine hells are you doing staring at those lines? Report." Steve didn't flinch, didn't even look up. He just pointed a long, pale finger at the screen. "They aren't random, Captain." His voice, usually a monotone murmur, was strangely firm. "Everyone sees randomness. The AI sees randomness. But it's not. It's structured." Clive scoffed, running a hand through his close-cropped gray hair. "Structured chaos? That's a new one. Our best AIs are spitting out probability matrices that look like Jackson Pollock on meth. We're getting hammered, Joyce. Cities are falling, people are dying, and you're seeing pattern." "Not seeing, Captain," Steve corrected, his gaze locked on the swirling crimson lines. "Feeling, like music. Dissonant, chaotic music, but music nonetheless." Dr. Matt Lichtblau, the lead AI specialist, a sharp, impeccably dressed man who usually treated Steve like a particularly dusty piece of office furniture, pushed his way forward. "Music? Joyce, with all due respect, we are facing an existential threat. This isn't a symphony recital." "Exactly," Steve muttered, rocking slightly in his chair, fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. "It's harmonic warfare. They aren't using projectiles, not in any way we understand. They are resonating, disrupting, like a frequency attack, but spatial and temporal, not just energy." Lichtblau frowned, his skepticism warring with a flicker of intrigued curiosity. "Resonating? Explain that, Jost. In English preferably, and quickly." Steve struggled to articulate the swirling patterns in his mind. "Think of a glass, Doctor. Hit it with the right frequency, and it shatters. They're doing that. But to cities, to reality, their attacks, they aren't targeting specific points. They're targeting nodes, harmonic intersections in space." Clive's brow furrowed deeper. "Space-time. Harmonics. Are you saying this alien tech is musical?" "Not musical in our sense," Steve clarified, finally turning his head. His eyes, usually distant and unfocused, were now burning with an intense, almost unsettling clarity. "Think of it as the universe has a background hum, a fundamental vibration. They're tuning into that hum and playing a counter-melody of destruction." Lichtblau, despite himself, was leaning closer, his initial dismissal fading. "And the AI, it can't detect this melody?" AI is looking for linear threats, Doctor. Projectiles, energy signatures, predictable attack vectors. It's designed for Newtonian warfare. This is quantum. Subtle. It's in the gaps, the spaces between the attacks, in the timing, not the location. It's a temporal fractal, layered and repeating, but never exactly the same, like a chaotic echo. Clive, for all his military gruffness, was surprisingly open-minded when faced with the impossible. So, what are you saying, Jost? The AI is blind because it's listening to the wrong instrument? Steve nodded, a rare, almost imperceptible smile twitching at the corner of his lips. Precisely, Captain. It's listening for drums when they're playing. Violins. Dissonant, screaming violins played on the strings of reality itself. Against all logic, against the screams of the analysts around them, Clive barked an order. Lichtblau. Give Joist whatever he needs. Resources, data, time, anything. He's the only one here who even sounds like he's speaking the same language as these musicians. For the next frantic hours, Steve became a whirlwind of focused energy. He ignored food, ignored sleep, existing solely on lukewarm coffee and the raw data streams flooding his makeshift station. He mapped the attacks, not in spatial coordinates, but in temporal frequencies, in vibrational patterns. He used archaic software, algorithms he'd coded himself, tools the AI specialists would have scoffed at. But Steve wasn't looking for patterns within the data. He was looking for the pattern of the data, the meta-rhythm that pulsed beneath the chaos. He saw it. He felt it. It wasn't just random. It was a complex, dissonant harmony, each attack a note in a horrifying symphony of destruction. The aliens, the resonance raiders as Steve started calling them in his head, weren't just attacking, they were composing. "I've got it," Steve whispered hoarsely, his voice cracking from disuse. He called up a visualization on his screen, a swirling vortex of color, pulsing and throbbing like a living thing. The pattern, the score? It's based on prime number sequences, interwoven with temporal distortions, modulated by gravitational lensing effects we can barely detect. Lichtblau, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and disbelief, stared at the visualization. Prime numbers? Gravitational lensing? This is insane. Insane, Steve agreed, his voice gaining strength. But not random. It's a language of destruction, but a language nonetheless. And if we understand their language, we can talk back. Clive, ever pragmatic, cut to the chase. Talk back how, Jost? Diplomacy isn't exactly an option when cities are turning into dust. Not diplomacy, Captain, Steve said, a dangerous glint in his eye. Counter-harmony. If they're playing a dissonant symphony, we play a counterpoint, a frequency that disrupts their music. A harmonic shield. It was a desperate, ludicrous idea. But they were out of options. They repurposed experimental sonic weaponry, temporal distortion generators, technologies deemed too unstable, too fringe for conventional warfare. They fed Steve's chaotic algorithms into the systems, hoping against hope that his counter-harmony wasn't just the ramblings of a brilliant, autistic mind on the edge of a breakdown. Quickly, Steve constructed helmets and used microtrums to receive stimulation. The moment of truth arrived. Another wave of alien attacks was imminent. Cities braced for annihilation. Then, on Steve's command, they activated the counter-harmonic generators. A low hum filled Sector Gamma 7, vibrations resonating deep in their bones. The air shimmered, distorting slightly, as the generators unleashed their chaotic symphony of counter-frequencies. Steve, on the main monitors, the crimson attack lines faltered. They stuttered. They warped. Instead of dissolving cities, the alien attacks seemed to dissipate, like sound waves hitting a wall of silence. The metallic screams that had heralded destruction faded, replaced by nothing. An unsettling, blessed silence. Then, just as suddenly as they had arrived, the attack vectors vanished. The screens went dark. The resonance raiders, were gone. Sector Gamma 7 erupted in stunned silence, then a wave of disbelieving cheers. Clive clapped Steve on the shoulder, a gesture so awkward it was almost endearing. "Joist, you magnificent, crazy son of a bitch! You actually did it!" Steve, blinking in the sudden brightness of the fully restored lights, just nodded, his gaze already returning to the data streams, now showing the patterns of the alien retreat. "They'll be back," he murmured, almost to himself. "They'll adapt. But we understand their language now. And maybe, just maybe, our dissonance is louder than theirs." Humanity had stared into the abyss of incomprehensible alien destruction and found its weapon not in lasers or missiles, but in the unique, pattern-seeking mind of a man they'd almost forgotten. The AI might rule the battlefield, but it was Steve Joist, the autistic mathematician lost in his own world of numbers and frequencies, who had heard the silent scream of the universe and answered with a harmonic fury of his own. And for now, at least, humanity was still singing.